Tonight, we begin part 2 of our Southern U.S. Dogman series. We have a lot of good, spooky tales for you tonight. Encounters ranging from Missouri, Mississippi, and Louisiana. Let's jump into the swamps of the South and prepare ourselves for the next round of werewolf and dogman encounters. Enjoy. Story 1. November 19th, 2015. I was rolling the trash cans out for pickup the next day. It was late, so I grabbed a flashlight. I walked out to the back door, unlocked the gate, and was dragging the can. While walking backwards, as I passed the fence, it blocked my view of my neighbor's garage. That's when my light hit this wolf creature. I froze instantly. The creature was about 20 feet away, and I could clearly see that it was crouching. When our eyes met, it turned to its right and fell to all fours and leapt my neighbor's driveway in one solid jump. That driveway is about 12 feet wide. The creature was about 8 feet tall and maybe 300 pounds. It looked kind of thin around the waist, but it was very muscular. I dropped the trash can and panic set in. I ran inside, grabbed my gun, and locked myself in my room. I've never felt fear like that before ever. When the light hit its eyes, they were vibrant, yellow, and menacing. His fur was short and charcoal colored. I could hear the clicking of his claws, and when he dropped down on all fours is when I saw it. I thought I was seeing things. I didn't sleep a wink that night. It made me really question my sanity. Furthermore, it made me seek a concealed carry weapons permit. Just a few nights ago, I heard something whimpering. When it was just starting to get dark, I slammed my window shut and hit the lights. I laid in bed with my AR-15 all night that night. Story 2. Date unknown. I should start off explaining that my partner and I are experienced Bigfoot investigators who are in a unique situation, as we have a family group living in our research area. Last October, during the full moon, my partner and I were on our hilltop, having quite a bit of success with 2 juveniles and 1 adult that we noticed. We could hear them walking in the leaf litter, and every once in a while, we could also hear a clack or wood knock from the different directions. After a while, it seemed the feeling of fun for them dissipated and became a lot more cautious. Mike heard something to our north and went a ways down to investigate while I stayed by the camp, just to make sure it wasn't a diversion. He came back in a rush and said he had seen one of the young ones come out of the woods line, running for the other side of the fire break, and what was following, he said he couldn't comprehend. It was about 6 feet tall, with pointy ears and a long snout. At this point, I have to say that neither of us have given any creed to the whole dogman, wolfman, grassman theory. We just thought it was a mistaken identification of a Bigfoot or even a bear. I had purchased a .40 caliber handgun and some hydro shock ammunition for it earlier that day, so it was in my vehicle. After Mike had explained what he had seen, I retrieved my weapon and loaded it. All the while, we could hear the 2 young ones chattering and the big ones stomping all to our backside. They were pissed or upset about something, and they never acted that way with us. I had Mike take me down the fire break to where he saw this creature, and with spotlights, we scanned the entirety of the area. We could hear something moving around and a few short growls. Finally, Mike caught it with the spotlight going between trees, and what I witnessed is something I would have never dreamed of seeing except on the Hollywood screen. A 6-foot wolf walking on its hind legs. I fired my weapon in the air, and it turned to the southeast into the woods. We cautiously made our way back to camp, but we could hear this thing pacing us to our left. As we got back to camp, we kept listening to this thing approaching us from the woods. Mike turned on the spotlight, and I leveled my gun wherever the sound was coming from. It was approaching us without fear, and it felt too like both of us like it was stalking us, as it was just one of our juvies that Mike had witnessed. It came out from between the trees, and I shot it square in the ribs at about 20 yards. We measured the next day, and I am a very good shot. I saw the wound, and know without a doubt I hit the son of a bitch. It fell to the ground, but immediately got up and ran to the southeast. We could hear it crash through the brush, and we even heard it fall down or trip over something. But it continued to head in pretty much a southerly direction, down the hill, paralleling the fire break. We were both freaked out by this time, and broke camp and left. The next morning, I loaded up a few extra clips, and we went back to see if it had died somewhere close, or was just wounded, so we felt we had to track it down. We did track it from the point of where I shot it, all the way down the canyon, and even found where it made such a ruckus when it fell. The leaf litter was all ended up and was fairly easy to track. At one point, we did a perfect canine track in a mud ridge, but it was over 8 inches across. The thing that absolutely baffled the both of us was that there was no blood trail whatsoever. Literally none. We both saw the bullet hit, yet no blood. We tracked it all the way down the canyon until we lost the trail. We talked to a Native American couple we know, and they immediately said skinwalker. We contacted a few other investigators just to try and figure out what the hell happened and what we were dealing with. I mentioned before that neither of us took any creed from any Dogman reportings, but I do know that neither of us wants to experience it again, and I have never gone out in the woods unarmed since. Story 3. Almost 3 years ago now, it was almost fall. I was heading up to get my husband from his mother's house, about an hour away from where we live. It was dark. The road had just turned into a gravel road. There is woods on one side, and a creek and commercial farm on the other side. This dark gray thing came from the creek side and jumped across the road. I could make out its back end, but definitely saw a tail like a dog's. I told him and his mom that I saw a donkey running across the road in front of me, but the tail looked like a dog's tail. I get laughed at for it, but I did stop my car and get out to look for the animal, thinking someone had lost a pet. A car pulled up, but kept going. I was hoping they would stop and ask me what was going on, but that didn't happen. I stood there for a couple of seconds and thought it was a dumb idea. A lot of horror movies start out like that after all, but that was the full extent of the sighting. Story 4. I saw 3 of them eating something big and bloody in a field. They saw me, stopped eating, and followed me back to the farm when I got out of there. This happened to me more than 50 years ago. It was forbidden to talk about in the family, lest the neighbors think we were crackpots. Now all the old folks are gone, and I've told my children about what I saw that day. They said I should write it down, but I think I'll leave that up to them to do. There were other strange things going on in the area, but at the time, we didn't connect them together. If the aunts and uncles did know what was going on, they wouldn't tell us kids a thing. It's been cathartic to talk about, and I'm so pleased to see that others have seen them too. But I have to tell you, to think back on something I've tried to forget for over 50 years is terrible. It was so frightening. I haven't been able to get a good night of sleep. Thinking back on all that gore and those things' faces, I truly believe they would have eaten me if they hadn't already just eaten. When I finally told where and what happened, I was called a bald-faced liar and given a good beating. Then, the folks went to the field, into the truck that I hid in, and saw the gore, blood, scratches, prints and all. Later, an uncle up the road, about 5 miles, had these prints come up to his house. He took pictures of them, and there was a newspaper article about some sort of huge cat prowling around. I don't know if that has anything to do with those critters or not, A neighboring farm that was owned by a wealthy family compared to us had a prized bull go missing. I bet that had something to do with those things. He was a huge thing and very ornery. They never found a trace. I know this is choppy and not quite clear, but it still makes me nervous to talk about, even after all this time. Story 5. This occurred in early December 2011 at around 2 a.m. in the morning. A friend and I were sitting in my bedroom, hanging out whenever we both noticed something moving on my surveillance monitor. I had a camera pointed down my driveway so I could see whenever I had company drive up. When we both looked, I saw what appeared to be a large canine running on all fours in mid-run. This thing came up on its hind legs and continued running across my field and across my driveway and into my brother's field on 2 legs. I was in shock, and my friend immediately turned to me with her mouth wide open. I asked her, "What did you just see?" And she replied with, "Well, what did you see?" I saw where this was going, so I then asked her, "How many legs was it running on?" And she just replied with, "It was running on all 4, but went to 2. I then had a cold chill run through my body, as I knew she saw exactly what I had. I jumped up and grabbed my night vision scope I had recently purchased, and I ran to the front of my door with my friend right behind me. I must admit I was hesitant to open that door for fear of it maybe standing right there. So I opened the door while letting out a roar as to maybe shock it if it was there, but it wasn't. Hey, I didn't know. I cautiously walked out on my front porch and took the scope and scanned the front field. There was nothing to be seen, nor do I know which direction it went in besides where I had just seen it last. I waited until daybreak and went out to where it crossed my driveway, and I found a paw print that was a good 12 inches by 12 inches. I was stunned. I just stood there looking back at the woods it had came from and looked south to where it was headed. I had no way to save the print and didn't think to take a picture at the time, nor was my camera recording at the time of sighting either. From what I could see on camera, this thing was massive in its upper body. I can still remember seeing the muscles flexing and the muscularity in its upper back as it came to a full height. It was running in weeds that came to my waist, but on all 4s, it was a good 2 feet above them, and when it went to full height, I would estimate it to be a good 8 feet tall. Due to the camera showing only black and white, I didn't get to see its color, but I could tell you it was dark. Its head is something else, and that stands out as I could watch and see the snout and its pointed ears, which were laid back whenever it went to 2 legs. I am an R&D technician, so I am trained to watch for details, and even though this thing was moving fast, faster than any human, I was so transfixed on its form and what I was seeing. It was headed south and into property that connects to Stennis Space Center's buffer zone, which is just over 100,000 acres of untouched and uninhabited acreage that was put aside just for the space shuttle program in Hancock County since the mid-60s. So it has all the resources it needs in order to survive in those woods and to go undetected. I have always been an outdoors man, but since that sighting, I will not go out in the woods without a gun on me now. I know for a fact I do not want to run into that thing up close. Story 6. This will be a brief summary, because if I wrote most of the entire encounter here, well, it's just way too long. On July 4th, 2016, just a few days ago now, 2 girlfriends and myself decided to raft down the Chattahoochee River and spend time at the diving rock and laugh at all the drunks enjoying their holiday. This is a North Georgia summer tradition going way back to the 60s. I am 47 now, but in my youth, I did it quite a few times and damn near killed myself doing a gainer off the diving rock when I landed on my belly, inhaled some water, and nearly drowned. I was fairly drunk and don't remember how I made it back to the surface, but my upper body was purple the next day, and my internal organs, well, they hurt for quite a few weeks. The river was way down that year. Gosh, I wanted to say it was maybe 1988, so that made the big flat rock at least 25 feet high off the river. Most people chickened out once they got up there. Anyhow, so this past Monday, after at least 28 years, we were back, but sober now since I haven't drank alcohol in well over 10 years. I had to answer the call of nature, number 2, so I had to walk very far back into the dense woods because of all the people, which was roughly 15 or so, waiting to jump. Having nothing but my bathing suit, I walked much further so I could try and find something akin to toilet tissue. Finally, after I reached a small clearing surrounded by old-growth pines, I began doing my business. As I am squatting in a very vulnerable position, out walks in broad daylight an enormous canine-type creature. Now, I need to tell you, I spent 21 years in an army, all over the world in 3 different theaters of war, and I have never even heard of this creature before. In the 3 days since, I have barely slept at all, researching everything in a zombified state. I can still taste the fear in my throat and my own vomit. I am 6 foot tall and about 250 solid pounds, and this thing dwarfed me, at least 7'6", and gosh, maybe 400 pounds. As a former college and semi-pro football player and powerlifter, I know about big people and about strength and musculature, and this was no normal creature that evolved somehow in that environment. This is some kind of genetically mixed entity of man, wolf, and primate. My encounter with it lasted for only minutes, but it displayed very bizarre behavior and vocalized several times at me. It stunk so bad and horrified me so badly that I retched again, and again. I was gone so long that the girls came looking for me, and they are what finally scared this thing off. When they found me, I was trembling and couldn't speak. As a combat lifesaver in the army, I can tell you for certain that I was in shock from this. Every joint in my body and my ab muscles are still hurting after 3 days. So I will be more than willing to share everything with you in the hopes that I can relieve my anxiety, but just expressing my trauma. Because I'm not sure what type I saw, but I can promise you that this is not something that anyone would want to encounter twice. I am not grateful, and I don't feel privileged, and I will not chase after this thing with a camera. Story 7. September 2015. This took place 3 weeks ago, while driving home from an event with my fiancé. It was already dark out and was raining when we hit the road this night. I, myself, was driving and my fiancé was in the passenger seat. We had been driving for about 15 minutes at most when we got to a part of the road where I had noticed a rather large figure in the opposite lane of the two-way road. It seemed to be on all fours and was grayish in color. It was very quick, which was startling, given the conditions after all. I asked my fiancée if she had seen it. She just said yes, but seemed spooked about it. I wanted to stop, but couldn't because there was another car, only about 100 feet behind us. I also didn't look back because I didn't want to stay focused on that thing. I would rather my focus be on the road, because of the poor conditions and the fact that we were in an area we never had been in until that night. I truly don't think it was a cow, from what I saw, even with the fleeting glimpse I had of it. Its hair was much more canine-like than anything else. I would have to conclude that it was a Dogman or a Bigfoot. I definitely wish I would have been able to get a longer look at it during the daytime. It was within feet of my door, but because it happened so quickly, and the fact I kept my focus on the road instead of turning to look at it, I didn't see it clearly. That's pretty much my encounter to a T. Story 8. There are poultry farms located east of Shreveport. In November of 2017, there have been incidents of Dogman encounters on this farm. The footprints, dead chickens, sightings, and even farmers shooting at the creature with shotguns, rifles, and pistols. Video taken by one of the overseers on duty. What is bad is that there are several other farms over the area that have had these werewolf encounters, and it's bad for business. We must have the wildlife agents deal with tracking them to their lair of residence and terminating the damn things. The frequency of incidents is more and more. These farmers are not in the mood to have their lives torn by these dogmen, and unless dealt with now, they will only do more damage. As far as being broadcast to the general public about these demons and their doings, they are not informed, and the cappers that prevail are unchecked by most area farmers and residents. This story should be a wake-up call for the law enforcement community and the area farmers, as well as the citizens, to make a stand against these werewolf dogman things. Story 9. As county parish SWAT team members and law enforcement officers, we spend a lot of time training in the bayous and wooded areas around Shreveport, Louisiana. The need to crawl through thick woods and creeks and bayou settings is a necessity. Well, sir, my friend and Deputy Jim and I could not believe the creature we encountered last week in the swamp. A dogman-looking werewolf type of thing that we crept up on over by the old rice mills and took some pictures of the area. We were actually scared shitless, so we kept our distance and checked its movement. This thing walking around on its hind legs, so we decided to check it out and go watch it as it closed in on us. This dog thing was heading for our training area, and we then decided to take the creek to beat it out of our camp. The dogman werewolf thing came up the fence line and then stayed in the shrubbery just to see us. My partner Jim shot around over its head and saw the reaction. Well, the dog critter to walk away towards the woods where he comes another one up the old road, and this one was looking for us. We laid down and spotted the dogman with our scopes and checked his motion as he walked towards us. He stopped in the road just 7 feet away from us. He was sniffing the air trying to get a scent. We did not move for 1 minute. He then went to his buddy and they walked away into the woods. Both Jim and I were fearful of them, even though we were armed and ready to kill. We waited 5 minutes, then went to our vehicles to write a report on this incident, which our supervisors said was a bunch of hogwash and he would see us again Monday morning. So we had our encounter not knowing what these creatures were and what to do. We will think twice when we go into the dark Louisiana bayous again. Thanks, and stay safe. Story 10. May 2010, Hunterbone. My German Shepherd hunting dog and myself went early to hunt this morning at 5:45, along the old abandoned railroad bridge that crosses the bayou close to my home in the town of Crowley, Louisiana. 70,526 population. As it was early, there was a humid fog and dark enough not to see a thing. As we walked slowly in between the rails of this old set of rusty railroad tracks, Hunterbone stopped and looked ahead down the rails as if he heard or sensed something. With nothing in view, we continued along only for Hunterbone to stop abruptly once again. "What is it, boy? A raccoon? A rabbit?" What suddenly, a huge, hairy dog thing came out of the fog down the rails, standing on its hind legs, upright. Oh shit. I was terrified and fearful, and raised my Remington 12 gauge to fire off 2 rounds of buckshot over this wolf thing's head. Bam! Bam! The critter howled loudly and turned to run back to the rails across the old bridge, and I could hear the son of a bitch as he snapped shrubbery and foliage in the distance. Hunterbone and I ran back towards the pickup, and I had turned about 50 yards to fire 2 more rounds for insurance, so we would make it home. As we got in the truck, we hauled boggy fast back to the main road that leads to Crowley. As we pulled into Exxon gas station, I saw a Louisiana state trooper and explained my ordeal to him. He said he has had hairy dog creatures run in front of his cruiser at night, and it disturbed him greatly, but that the thing always heads off into the woods or jumps off the road. Well, okay, I'm going to go home and chill out later. As I sat in my home, I tried to rationalize what the hell I just experienced, and why. For one thing, after 25 years of bayou hunting, why the hell did I not ever hear of this creature or even experience it? This encounter will keep me from hunting alone in the future. This really rattled my chain for certain, and I suggest to you, if you are going to hunt here in the south of Louisiana by yourself, you as well better be prepared. Well, sir, be safe and be watchful. Story 11. April 18th, 1998. Down the railroad tracks about 2 miles is an old nursery, the Ziegler Plant Nursery. The old couple, the Zieglers, are both now dead, but the 5-acre homestead is now owned by a veterinarian, Dr. Artal, who lives on the property. The previous owners reported 2 werewolf creatures jumping a fence in broad daylight as their children watched in horror. The daughter and son jumped on top of the car, spellbound. Later, encounters had the werewolf excrement poop on the front porch. The state wildlife authorities came and filed a report, but they could not identify the poop or the tracks of paw prints at all as listed in any logged familiar comparison to identified species known. So, come to find out, this homestead is built on an Indian burial ground. Imagine that. I called Mrs. Ziegler after her husband died. She stated she had a loaded firearm in every room and a holy cross on every room. As of 2010, Miss Ziegler also passed away. I recently went to the Crowley barbershop, and an elderly gentleman said he once was the gardener, maintenance, and grass mower at the Ziegler Plant Nursery many years ago, and when he would go inside the house, objects would move on their own, and the furniture and beads would shake violently, and crosses would spin upon the walls. Obviously, there seems to be some sort of strange connection between the paranormal and these werewolf creatures. I hope you enjoyed part 2 to this series. If you like my content, feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and be sure to like, as it helps me out tremendously. There are many great encounters to come, and there have been many of you requesting more parts to come for the other Dogman series, like the Eastern and Western encounters, and I promise you, I got many good things cooking up for you folks. There will be more parts coming, and a lot of other cool encounters coming down the pipeline. Stay tuned.